Good morning, students. So today we'll start a new chapter from the same unit of database concept. So this is chapter 2, that is structured query language. In short, it is SQL. So let's see what this chapter contains. So what is SQL? SQL stands for Standard Structured Query Language, which is pronounced as SQL, or you can just pronounce it as SQL. Most commonly, it is just pronounced as SQL. Okay, so structured query language. Query, as in the sense like the user sends a request to the database to extract some data information. Okay. So a database management system, in short DBMS, it requires a language to help the user in accessing the data stored in the database. So since all the data are stored in the database, uh, the user needs to access the data. Okay, so using this SQL query language, okay, the user can access the data that is stored in the database. So it is a standard language used for managing data in a relational database management system, so RDBMS. So I've already discussed about what is DBMS and what is RDBMS. So when we talk about relational database management system, we are talking about the data stored in a relation, okay, where there can be a relation between two or more tables. Okay, so now SQL is a query language. It has its own syntax, it has its own keywords to be used, and it has its own rules to be implemented. Okay, so this language will have its own syntax, keywords, and rules that will be used. So it is like in a simple English sentence. Okay, it is written like in a simple English like sentence, so users find it much easier to use this SQL query language. So now it is used for creating database, okay, or tables, for deleting records in a table, or for inserting records, updating the records, storing data, retrieving the data in the database. So SQL language, it is based on the concept of relational algebra. So we have seen what is relational algebra in previous videos. Okay, if you have not understood that, just go back to the previous videos and have a look at what is relational algebra. Okay, so we have covered a small topic on that. So SQL is mostly based on that relational algebra, because if you see the relational algebra also, the relational algebra statements are written as in like a English language sentence. Okay, so now where is SQL used? So all the relational database management system software packages which we have seen earlier, okay, like MySQL, Oracle, so SQL servers, these are some of the softwares of relational database management system. So in order to use these software packages, or in order to communicate with these software packages, the the most standard language is used is this SQL. Okay, so since it is easy to learn and easy to modify, so this SQL language is most preferably used by the software packages. So now what is the need of SQL? So using SQL, one important thing is that the data is meant for the users. So users can send queries and able to access that. Otherwise, if the data is not accessible, what is the use of storing the data in the database, right? So users, be it naive users, end users, programmers, database administrators, anyone, they can send queries to access the data from the database. Now, this SQL is efficient, it is easy to learn and use. So since it operates on DBMS concept, it supports multiple user systems. That is one of the main advantage of SQL. DBMS on its own, it is a single user system support, but RDBMS, it supports multiple user system. Okay, because the data is based on a relation, where there can be relation between two or more tables. Like a relationship can be established between two or more tables. So multiple data are related together. Okay. Now, the security mechanism is also provided where sensitive informations can be hidden based on integrity key constraints, such as like we have already seen some key constraints, some keys like primary key, foreign key, candidate key, alternate keys. So based on these keys and integrity constraints, okay, table constraints, column constraints like that. So the security is enhanced using this SQL on the RDBMS. Okay. So now, what is the classification of SQL? So SQL commands are classified into the following categories. So the first one is DDL, that is data definition language. So this data definition language statements, it is used to create database. So the first step towards involving with the database is creating the database, and that is done with this data definition language statements. Okay, then with that you can create tables. So the tables are stored in the database. Okay, so the database itself is uh, filled with tables. So these tables is also created using this DDL commands. So tables then modify the structure of the database. Okay, so with that you can modify the structure of the database. So in short, it defines the database. Okay, the whole definition of the database starts with this DDL command. So next is your DML, that is data manipulation language. Okay, so this statement, it is used to manage data in tables belonging to the database. So any kind of manipulation that needs to be done after the DDL, after creating, okay, if you need to insert any data update, okay, this is done using the data manipulation language. Okay, so next we have is TCL, that is data control language. Okay, so data control language statements are used for database administration. So this is used to convert the data stored in database by giving different types of privileges to users to access the data. So it is also in terms of security. Okay, so this using this data control language, okay, users have different access privileges to access the data. That means to access the tables that is stored in the database. So we will see all this one by one. Okay, so next is transaction control language, in short TCL. So this transaction control language statements, it is used to manage the changes that has been made in the database table. So if any changes has been made in the database or the tables, okay, the changes are reflected back using this transaction control language, or it is also called as transactional and locking statements. Okay, then along with that we have some other statements called as utility statements. Okay, so these utility statements helps the users, okay, uh, in uh, in using the database. Okay, that is such commands as like describe, explain, help, usage, like that. Okay, so the first one that we'll see is some commands used in data definition language, that is DDL. So these are some of the most basic commands that you see in data definition language. The first one is create. Always this is the keyword, okay, that is used first to create the database or to create a table. So it is used to create new database. Okay, if you're creating a school database, so you'll be using this keyword to create that school database. Or in the school database, if you need to create tables, suppose like student table, teachers table, course tables, okay, so admission table. So using this create command, you can create a new table so that it can be used in the database. Okay. Next is the drop command. So using this drop keyword, you can delete the entire database or the entire table from the database. So if you want to remove the database, or if you want to remove some certain tables which you find that it is not needed, you can delete it using this drop table. So it will delete the entire table from the database. Next is the alter command. So using this alter command, you can modify the existing table, not uh, an existing table. Okay, that means a table that already exists in the database. Okay, or you can, yes, alter the existing database. Okay, so mostly is used to alter the tables that is existing in the already created database. Okay, then a truncate. So truncate removes records or tuples from the tables. So there are some certain rules regarding using that. Okay, it removes the rows of data from the table. Okay, then we have the rename keyword, where we are able to rename the database table. So once a database is created, with it needs a database name. Suppose like school database, the name of the database is school, or the suppose like the name of the table is student. So if you want to change the uh, student table name to suppose like stud, you can use this keyword rename. Okay, so these are some of the few DDL commands that we will see and that you'll be using. Okay, these are the most common DDL commands that will be used. Okay, so in the next class I'll be discussing about the DML commands. Okay, DML, TCL, and TCL commands, and then some rules relating with the SQL commands. Okay, and then some SQL data types. So for this tutorial, it will be all for today.